For the Detroit Lions this offseason, this particular one has a unique challenge to it that offers a lot of tough questions that the Lions fans are desperately looking answers for. So we're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned.
We used to be a team no one respected. We used to be a team no one feared. That was then. This is now.
First victory of the year on the line. Goff's got it. Back, looks, throws, end zone. Yes! Caught!
You know who we are.
10, 5, end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
And you know where to find us. We won't be far. We'll be on your front porch waiting for you. We are the New Era Lions. And
we are driven by Detroit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving in. But before we do so, again, just want to give a quick thank you and a quick shout out to all my loyal fans and subscribers, and to also all those that are tuning into my show for the very first time. To everybody, you guys are absolutely awesome, and I'm thankful to each and every one of y'all. God bless, hope y'all have a great day, and let's get into the content here. So, here's the thing, folks. When we take a look at this particular offseason, when we take a look at what this offseason has going forward, we now know that the scouting combine is done. We now know that the financial aspects of what a lot of people are trying to do right now are going to start having an impact because NFL free agency is quite literally right around the corner. I think it's about to start in the next week or so. So if you think about it, all of these moves that teams are doing, cutting players, restructuring contracts, making decisions on who to keep, who to resign, who to extend, all that nonsense that we've been hearing in the news for the last couple of days and weeks, that's all going to start having an impact because now what we're going to see is that the NFL teams, the NFL ball clubs, the organizations, they're now going to start making decisions that are going to impact how the rosters are put together. They're now going to start making financial decisions about who is going to be a part of their team for the upcoming 2024 NFL season. Now, when we think about this upcoming, free agency period, we think about all this stuff that's upcoming. The one team that I think has a lot of interest that a lot of people are trying to figure out what they're going to do, what questions they're going to try and answer, is my team, the Detroit Lions, because you have to think about what the Lions have going for them this offseason. This offseason is particularly interesting for a lot of people and a lot of Lions fans because of the simple nature of the fact that, we haven't really been in a spot like this for a long time. Think about it. Every single offseason for the last, 20, 25, 30 years, we have been trying to find a formula. We have been trying to find a recipe. We have been trying to find a game plan where we could actually get to a place where we could have a sustainable roster that is actually a good one, that actually produces, that is actually successful. And like I've been saying, the last 20, 25, 30 years, we simply haven't been able to do it. We have not been able to find that recipe where we could actually have a roster that, one, was sustainable, but at the same time was successful. It was always like, hey, if we happen to find success, it was a one-off, or maybe it was that case for a season or two. Now, we're actually seeing how the Lions have, one, built that sustainable roster, but it's also showing progression and has gotten continually better each and every single year that we've been under the Dan Campbell and, Brad Holmes regime. Because think about it. Go back to when the Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell regime first got started. It was a 3-13-1 season. The very next season, we went 9-8, and we barely missed the playoffs. Then we progressed from that, and we go 12-5, win 2 home playoff games, and we get to the NFC Conference Championship game. And again, as I've said, we came literally quite within a whisker of getting to the Super Bowl. Like, we were 1 quarter away from getting to a Super Bowl. That's how damn close the Lions got. So when you think about it, the progression of where we started in 2021 to 2022 to 2023, we have quite literally seen that steep progression that Dan Campbell has talked about, that, that inching forward and getting closer and closer to the ultimate goal. So it's like, okay, the Lions have clearly shown that what they're doing is working, what they're doing is genuine. But now we come to this offseason and it's like, okay, what do you do to, one, not only maintain what you've already accomplished, but get just that little bit better to get to that Super Bowl? Because again, Every offseason provides challenges, and this one is no different. It's a new offseason, and it provides new, unique challenges that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have to try and figure out about how they're going to assemble this roster, because it's like, listen, the Lions have now become a Super Bowl favorite. They're now considered a Super Bowl contender. They ain't hiding from anybody. And because of that, the pressure to at the very least maintain the success that they've already garnered, but get to that next level, to get to that Super Bowl accomplishment that they have yet to really get to, the pressure is immense. Not just from us Lions fans, it's from the entire NFL, because now it's like, okay, the Lions are not a team that's going to be hiding on anybody. They're not going to be sneaking up on anybody. Everybody knows about the Lions. They know the success. They know their progression. So it's like, okay, now we need to see what we do next. And there's a lot of tough questions that the Lions have to answer this offseason. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's understand first and foremost the Lions' makeup as a team. Their roster build. Offense is not the problem. This offense is dangerous, it's explosive, it's dynamic, it's effective. Use any term you like, it all works for the Lions offense. It is an offense that has no problem scoring points, and it has no problem moving the ball. However, though, flip that coin on the opposite end and you start talking about the defense. Everybody knows that the Lions' Achilles heel is the defense, and it has been that way for years. Simply put, if you think about it, if the Lions defense was giving up points, chances are the other team was going to win, because it didn't matter how many points we were scoring, our defense was giving up the points almost nearly as fast, if not faster. And it's hard to win games when the defense is not stopping opposing offenses from scoring. Doesn't matter how many damn points you score. And that's been the way it's been for a long time, because our defenses have been, simply put, lackluster for quite a bit. Now, to further expand upon that, everyone also knows that when it comes to the defense this year, there are two primary areas that the defense absolutely 100% must improve and get progression out of. And that is the pass rush and the pass defense. Now, of those two, I would say the pass defense is a much higher priority, because at least in the pass rush department, we have Aiden Hutchinson, who has shown that he is going to be a great player, if not potentially, one of the best to ever play, because of what he's already done in his first 2 years. So, when you think about it, we need another pass rusher to pair opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, but what we really, really need is a true number one lockdown, shutdown cornerback that we can put up against another team's top number one wide receiver. And when you think about it, this year is a particularly interesting one for the Lions fans and for Lions in general, because it's like, okay, normally when we go into the offseason, there's usually a scarcity of options for what the Lions are looking for. It's like, okay, we're scratching the bottom of the barrel here because there's not much to look at. But this year, that's not the case. If anything, this year the Lions have a literal bevy of options. There is a plethora of options that they can go with. Now, I know for some people they could say, well, David, why is that tough then? Why is that difficult to figure out? Here's why it's difficult. When you have less options, it's like, okay, I have to choose what's the best option that's available from what I've been given. But when you have nothing but a plethora of options, oh yeah, you have much more room for success. You also have a lot more room for error. Now understand exactly what I mean by that. I do not for 1 minute think that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are going to make the wrong decision when it comes to acquiring talent for this team. I can question a decision and say that doesn't make any sense to me, but I trust Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to make the right decision, because it's like, listen, over the last 3 years, they have done nothing but the right things. Doesn't necessarily mean I always agreed with everything that they did, but I trust what they're doing. It's called being human. But when you think about how many options the Lions truly have this offseason to upgrade the pass defense and the pass rush, it starts to become a little bit more difficult to figure out, okay, what do we truly want to go with? Because there's a lot of different ways the Lions can take this. And just to point it out here, just for case in point, think about it this way, folks. When you just take a look at free agency, the draft, and potential trades that the Lions could, in essence, do to upgrade either of those two areas, it really starts to make your head spin. Because just think about this. Over the last, 24, 48 hours, it has absolutely just been a spectacular thing to watch how quickly and how fast the freaking free agency market has grown because of teams that are cutting players. They're saying, listen, we don't have the ability to afford you. We have to let you go. Think about it just in terms of the cornerbacks and the edge rushers or defensive ends that are out there on the market right now in the free agency pool. Just for cornerback, you got guys like Tre'Davious White, Xavier Howard, Stephon Gilmore, Avonte Maddox, Kendall Fuller. These are all guys that are free agents. They're out there on the market that the Lions could potentially, again, heavy emphasis on that word, potentially go after. Now, I'm going to be honest. Some of these guys, I would hope and pray to dear God the Lions don't go after. Such guys like Tre'Davious White, I don't want him to go after because he has an injury history, and he has been playing less and less every single year with the Bills prior to his release. You take a look at Xavier Howard. Over the last couple of years, he has not been playing like a top cornerback that he was getting paid from the Dolphins. And when you take a look at Stephon Gilmore, he's been a great cornerback in the NFL for a long time. But that right there is the problem. He's on the old side. He's like 33 years old. So you got to really ask yourself the question, how much more does this guy realistically have in the tank? But again, these are all options that the Lions can go with. Then you take a look at the edge rushers, the defensive ends that are in the free agency market. You got guys like Hunter, you got Chase Young, you got Yannick Ngakoue. These are also guys that the Lions can go after. So when it comes to the free agency pool just by itself, there are a plethora of options that the Lions could potentially explore, that they could potentially go after. But it doesn't end there. The draft also has a plethora of options that the Lions can go after, which only further makes you have to ask the question, well, which way do you go then? Because take a look at when it comes to the cornerback room in terms of the draft. There are quite a lot of guys that the Lions could go after with that number 29 pick, or if they decided to trade back in the high second round and go after someone there. Such guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, Kyrie Jackson, TJ Tampa, Enos Rakestraw. All of these are guys that I have talked about at least to some degree, some a little bit more than others. But they're all guys that the Lions could potentially target at number 29 or in the second round. Then you take a look at the edge rushers. Again, there's quite a lot of options. You got guys like Chop Robinson, Darius Robinson, Braylon Trice, Jonah Ellis. These are all guys that the Lions could go after because, again, they are guys that you could potentially get in that first round pick or second round pick. Hell, maybe even the third round, depending upon how the draft boards fall out. The point of the matter is between free agency and the draft itself, you've got at least right there, from what I can count, a good freaking, 15 names that you can go after. That's a lot of choices. And again, there's nothing wrong with choices. There's nothing wrong with options. But the more options you present, that means there's more potential room for screwing it up. There's more potential room for having there being an error. And again, I trust that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell will make the right one. But it's like, I have to wonder, who do they go with? How do they fix the situation? How do they get this defense to be where we need it to be to take that next step? And again, that's just the draft and free agency. We still haven't even talked about potentially trading for somebody. Because I know for Lions fans, the one trade that they are looking at right now that they would love to see the Lions potentially pull off is trading with the Kansas City Chiefs for cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. That is a name that we have heard all offseason, and it's a name that a lot of Lions fans would like to see come to the Detroit Lions because it's like, hey, we know what kind of cornerback this guy is. And you know what? The Lions could potentially pull off the trade because, again, I don't know where I saw this, but I know I saw it because I don't just make stuff out of the blue. I remember reading this somewhere that supposedly, heavy emphasis on that word, supposedly, the corner that the Chiefs are looking for at the bare minimum a second-round draft pick for L'Jarius Sneed, which, if you think about it, that kind of makes sense because you have to think about it. L'Jarius Sneed was a fourth-round draft pick for the Chiefs. So if they're able to take a fourth-round draft pick and get a second-round draft pick out of it, that right there already shows a vast return on investment, number one. But also, number two, then the Chiefs would be getting rid of $19.8 million off of their cap books because then that would mean that the team that trades for, Sneed would then have to take over that contract, which is the franchise tag, and then whatever new deal they'd have to, work out. So that makes a lot of sense that the Chiefs are like, listen, we wanted a bare minimum, a second-round draft pick, because we know you're going to have to take up a lot of cap space to take care of this guy, but at the same time, we want a return of investment more so than what we put into this dude. And that's not to also include another guy that a lot of people are starting to talk about, which is Marshawn Lattimore of the New Orleans Saints. Why are they talking about Lattimore? Well, the reason why they're talking about him is because Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn are from the New Orleans Saints before they came to the Detroit Lions. So obviously there's a history there. Obviously there's a connection there. And for some people, they think that that would be just enough of a reason why the Lions might potentially go after Lattimore and bring him in. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Lions are one of 7 teams that have reportedly showed interest in trading for L'Jarius Sneed. So that's one that I think has a little bit more credibility at this point. But the whole point of the matter is between draft, free agency, trade, the Lions have a literal, and I mean it, literal plethora of options, a literal plethora of ways that they could potentially handle this situation, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the more options, the more answers you potentially can put into this little equation, there's more chances of it getting screwed up. The best way I can think about it is this is like an algebra equation, and it's like, oh, x plus y equals z. I know what X is, and I know what Z is, but what is Y? Because it's like, okay, I know what I have right now, and I know what I want to get to, but what do I plug in at Y to potentially get to Z? That is the problem. That is the, okay, what do we do kind of scenario right here? Because it's like, okay, do you go free agency and you spend big on a few free agents that could potentially hit or they could potentially miss? And depending upon how that goes, it's going to put you in a financial hole one way or the other because most free agents nowadays, they aren't cheap. Then you go to the other option. Do you potentially go to the trade route? Okay, fine. You're going to get an established player. You're going to get a really good player because obviously if you're trading for them, they usually have something to offer. But you have to play double jeopardy with them because you're going to have to most likely trade draft picks, and then you're going to have to pay that player if they don't have a contract that's already in place or they want a new deal. And then the final option is the draft, which the draft is probably by far the most fiscally responsible way you can go about it. But there's so much unknown about these rookies, you don't know if they're going to pan out or not, and if you have to redo the whole process in a year or two or maybe 3. So it's like, listen, no matter which way you go, there is a degree of uncertainty. There's a degree of risk. The question is, okay, how much risk are you willing to take, and how certain are you that that risk is not going to potentially come back to bite you in the you-know-what? Again, this is part of the reason why I like Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, because they have more times than not made the right decision. And again, sometimes they have made decisions that I don't necessarily agree with, but I still trust them to do the job because again, over the last 3 years, they have proven that they have earned the trust. They have proven that, hey, they've earned that benefit of the doubt. So even if I may not agree with the decision, I still trust them. It's part of being human. But anyway, folks, I figured I would talk about this because, again, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I'm not saying it like, oh, well, you need to answer this or else. I'm just saying I'm very curious to see what the Lions do because I'm a little bit anxious, but not a bad way. I'm anxious because I want to see how Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell really wheel and deal this offseason because now the Lions are operating in a position of strength that we are not accustomed to. And it's kind of fun to see, okay, what do we do next? But anyway, I'm just going to leave the episode here, call it a day, and just simply say to everybody, thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage all to watch the next episode. Also encourage all to do one of these 3 things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past or forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed not had a chance to do so, again, thank you all for subscribing, and it absolutely warms my heart that I have those people that want to subscribe to the channel. But after you subscribe, if you so choose to subscribe, please make sure you turn on that bell notification icon at the bottom so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. Again, subscription numbers always going up, but we want to make sure we turn on the notification icon so that way as soon as I push something out, you guys can come right back into the show. I also want to encourage y'all to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we share it, the greater the channel spreads, the greater the channel grows. And with that, I just want to say to everybody again, thank you all for watching the content. Absolutely warms my heart. And thank you all for everything that you do. Thank you all for your devotion to the channel. If you just became a new MCM subscriber, welcome to the MCM family. So glad to have y'all. If you still haven't decided to do so, hopefully I'll get you on the next chance you decide to tune in. But until that time, to everybody, I just want to say God bless. Thank you all for watching the content. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.